the Sheriff of Hamilton County, Ohio, Sheriff Charmaine McGuffy.
I was a girl who dreamed beyond the odds, and I grew up in a neighborhood that really most people didn't pay much attention to. And we were kids in that neighborhood whose parents were either working or absent. And because of that, we spent a lot of time together as kids in groups. And you know, when you run around with kids like that in your neighborhood, it really comes down to the oldest kid in the group that day is the person in charge. And what I learned was that depending on who was in charge of that group, good things could happen that day or bad things could happen that day. And I decided I wanted to be in charge. And I want to make good things happen when I'm in charge. And so then I decided I should be a police officer. And I was so excited about deciding that I was going to be a police officer. And so I went to my Uncle Nick, who himself was a former police officer, retired from Cincinnati. And I was just so thrilled to tell him, hey, I've decided I'm going to be a police officer. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And I'll tell you why. You can't. And truly, at the time, I was 13, and you couldn't. As a woman, you could not be a police officer. And he explained that to me, that you can't go out in uniform, you can't be on patrol, you can't be a peer of a man. And the whole time he was explaining this to me, I'm thinking, how can I get this done? It's got to happen. I'm going to make it happen. And I hear him saying, you know, you really should take typing classes. You should become a clerk, a secretary even. You could go far. And, you know, I thought, I'm going to get this done. And so after attending, my mom, by the way, made me go to typing class for summer school. After all of that, I decided that I would go to the University of Cincinnati and pursue my dream. And I did exactly that. So I continued on that path. And really, it's interesting to note that it wasn't until I was going to graduate from the University of Cincinnati that someone had lobbied and changed that policy so that women could be police officers. And I was then a police officer. I was a woman. I joined the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, and I was in that first wave of women that came out in the policing field. And you know, I got to tell you, it was difficult. It was challenging. I mean, there were things that people said to you, that the men said to you, the things they did to you. You know, you really had to work really hard to get a good reputation and to keep people, men, the men that you worked with, who you are comrades with, who are, you know, working right next to you, to get them to treat you equally. And that was challenging. And along with that challenge, for me, there was also the challenge of being gay. I was gay. And I knew that if anybody found out I was gay, I could be fired. I knew I wouldn't get promoted. I knew my career would be tanked. And I knew that I would suffer even more difficulties. And so I kept to myself. I stayed under the radar, but even yet, there were people who guessed. They guessed I was gay. And, you know, there were times when people came up to me and they said, I'm going to tell that you are gay. Literally, people I worked with. And, you know, I never knew if they were going to follow through, if I would be fired. And I continued to work really hard. One day I went to the bathroom, the women's bathroom, and there was a little icon of the woman in the dress. And somebody had gone up to that and drew a line through the woman and wrote "dyke" across the top of it. And, you know, I thought, I'm going to continue to work hard. And that's what I did. I just went on. And I achieved the rank of sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and major. And I was successful in my career. But 26 years in, I was outed. So one night, my friends and I, we went to a gay bar over in Kentucky. And we really just went there just to watch the basketball game. And when the basketball game was over, we left. And it was about 11 o'clock at night. It was dark out. It was raining a little bit. And I was in the crosswalk walking to my car. And all of a sudden, I heard someone yelling, "Drop it! Drop it right now! Drop it now! You're under arrest! You're under arrest!" And I'm in the middle of this street, and I can't see anybody. There was nobody out. And I'm looking around, and I finally, by the way, I thought I was going to get shot, because those are gun words. Those are words I've heard, and that means gun to me. And I was frantically looking around for the threat. I look over, and I see 2 police officers stationed up, angled at the bar door, and I turn, I look around, and behind me is a friend of mine who is standing in the doorway of the bar with a beer in her hand. And that's who they're yelling at. And I knew at that moment, I thought, those guys are standing there to harass us for any tiny thing that we might do wrong. And, you know, I gotta tell you, there's a point in your life where you're just tired of it, right? Where you're just done. I was done. I was so tired of it. And so I yelled over there, and I said, "You guys are targeting a gay bar. And that is not right, and you guys should find something else to do with your time." And I might have said a couple cuss words in there. So with that officer, who was a good 30 feet away from me, closed that gap so quickly and ran to me and threw me on the ground. He threw me on the ground, he jumped on my back, and he put his knee on my neck. He held me in custody there on the ground, down the street. And when they found out who I was, that I was a captain in the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, when they found that out, it looked like a murder scene. The captains came, lieutenants came, the cars came, and they all stood around while I lay on the ground, face down, in the street. to decide what to do. What are we going to do now? And they decided to write me 3 tickets. And I went home. Well, those tickets were dismissed, very readily dismissed, but I had to report it. I follow the rules. When I reported that, things changed. I was out. I had to report I was at a gay bar, and some people began to treat me differently. I eventually was promoted to major of the jail here in Hamilton County. And as the major of the jail, in those years that I was the commander of that jail, I became aware of excessive use of forces, of prisoners being hurt really badly hurt in excessive force. I became aware of female inmates who were abused. I became aware of female officers who were being harassed. And I reported these things. I spoke up about this. And I told the sheriff and the chief about these things. And I was told to stand down, to be quiet. And of course I didn't do that. So eventually, Internal Affairs created a 108-page report that outlined the fact to them that I was unfit, I was hostile, and they included a line in the report that said, she is pro-lesbian. I don't know. I was like, what does that mean? Okay. So, anyway, I got called into the sheriff's office on May 5th, 2017, and in 15 minutes, I was fired. My career that I had worked so hard for and done so many things for was over. I was stripped of my uniform, stripped of my authority, and in 15 minutes, I was done. So I filed a lawsuit. And in my lawsuit, we alleged the wrongdoing on their part of 3 things. And 2 of the items I had documentation for. I had proof that I had not done these things, that I wasn't wrong, that these things didn't happen the way that they're portrayed in the report. But the third item was the truth. I was LGBTQ. Yes, I was. And so we talked about it, and my attorney said, we can include it. We're going to include it, but you really have no protection. You don't. And so we went forward, and it took a while for things to wind through, as you know, the legal system. And as we were getting into year 2 or so, in the spring of 2020, the Supreme Court ruled You can't discriminate against LGBTQ. And we won all three. All three. And in the meantime, I was running for sheriff of Hamilton County. And I beat the man who fired me. And I will tell you that I succeeded beyond my odds. And my victory, though, is because there were people, heroes, men and women, out there fighting my battle before I ever knew I was in the war. And I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for my faith. I'm grateful that the experience didn't break me and that it made my relationship with my lovely wife stronger. And I am so very grateful to the people who I could hear whispering to me, "Get up off the mat, we're in your corner." And I thank you.
All right, everyone. One more time for Charmaine.